go. All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the webinar or the Zoom call. As I was saying before, for any of you that weren't on a moment ago, I disclosed, I confessed, I should say, that I did not pay for the upgraded Zoom webinar. It's like $80 or something like that. And I thought for one thing, it's not really worth it to pay for that. So this is a Zoom call that we're gonna treat like a webinar. So TJ and I are co-hosting the webinar. If you want to actually speak at any time, you're welcome to. Since it is a Zoom call, you have that ability. You just have to unmute yourself and speak up. The chat is also a good place to communicate with us. I'll throw something in the chat so that you get a little bubble that pops up. And how about everybody go find that chat right now and just chat in where you're coming in from, where around the country. I know we've got Brad in Pennsylvania and people coming in from all over. Bree, I know, is coming in from Arizona. Rachel from New Hampshire. I'm in Arizona. So drop that in there and just get a sense for where we're all coming in from. I think that's a fun way to start. So the topic of this webinar is how to run a virtual code club. You can probably guess why we're choosing to run this training right now, because many libraries are closed or have been closed, and many will continue to at least not be running in-person programs for the foreseeable future. So with that in mind, it might be nice to put together a training on kind of best practices, what we're learning, what we've been discovering about how to run these virtual code clubs as we've been doing it. TJ was an early pioneer in that. He jumped on it right away. As soon as COVID hit, he started running virtual code clubs. So he's got a lot of wisdom to share with us. And then I've been doing some stuff too that I want to share with you guys. Like I said, I will be hosting it, CEO of Prenda Code Club. Most of you guys know me. And then TJ DeWitt is the director of Jones Creativity Center in Bristol, Virginia, at the Bristol Public Library, and he's awesome. I thought it might be fun to ask TJ a couple questions just to get to know him a little bit more. So TJ,
yeah,
my favorite icebreaker questions right now for adults are, what is one thing that you were into, one interest or hobby of yours when you were 18 years old?
Oh, 18. I guess video games.
Okay.
Is probably the best one. I can't think of any other real hobbies I was into, but I did like video games at the time.
Yeah, video game. All right, what era of video games was it when you were 18?
That would have been, let's see here. I think at that point I still had like a Super Nintendo. So
Okay.
That was where I was there. Yeah.
Okay, so like Super Mario World.
Yeah, that. I think my friend had a PlayStation not soon after then, so somewhere right in there.
All right. I like it. All right, so question number 2. Late night guilty pleasure food run. It's like 10 o'clock at night. You're like, oh, I'm kind of hungry. I could really go for something right now. What's your late night guilty food run?
Probably Taco Bell.
Oh man, that is a guilty one. That's a guilty one.
But they're open.
They are open, that's true. My answer to that question are Filiberto's bean burritos. I know Bree knows what Filiberto's is because she lives here in town. It's like a 24-hour Mexican food place, and it's like the style of Mexican food place where their menu is literally like they took a picture of the plate and put it up on the menu, you know? And yeah, Bree's probably rolling her eyes at me right now because they have a reputation for being something else. All right, cool. That was fun. So as we get started, I feel like every time I speak, every time I share something like this, I just have to get like back down to the basics, back down to the foundation of why we're all in this, why we're like spending our time and spinning our wheels trying to teach kids how to code. Most of us don't know how to code ourselves. So why would we go to all of this effort to do this? And I just come back to the core of what Prenda is, the core of why you guys as librarians exist. And it's because coding is the closest thing we have to a superpower. We're doing this because we really believe that we're going to give kids superpowers. By teaching them how to code, we're going to give them the superpower of super job opportunities in the future. Learning how to code is like the most marketable job skill in the world right now. I don't know if that's true, but it's like up there. And by running your code clubs, you're giving these kids the skill sets so they can actually get these jobs. Many of us live in communities where they don't have access to coding education in school or anywhere else. And so by us running a code club, we're literally like the only hope that they have to get these tech jobs in the future. And tech jobs are high paying jobs. The median national salary for an entry-level computer programmer is something like $65,000 a year. That's entry level. It goes up pretty quickly from there, but $65,000 a year for an entry level tech job. Now, for me, that's pretty remarkable. I know for you guys, you librarians make, 4 or 5 times that easily, but for us average people, $65,000, something to get excited about. And that's literally what's happening from the code clubs around the country. Like some of you may have been running them for long enough now, like Jeannie or Brad, where you actually have kids who have maybe aged out and maybe potentially have tech jobs. They were at 18 years old, like skilled enough that they could get those jobs. And that's a really incredible thing to be able to give. The other superpower that we talk about is life skills. It doesn't matter what your job career is in the future. Just learning how to code is gonna make you an amazing problem solver, because when you learn how to code, you run into a lot of problems, right? And you have to develop that skill, problem solving, critical thinking, rational thinking, that kind of thing. So it doesn't matter what your job career, job title is in the future, just by these kids being a part of your code clubs, going through the process, sticking with it week after week, you're giving them these life skills that are going to translate into any career, any like life situation. Doesn't matter if they're a parent or whatever, they're going to need to be good problem solvers, and these life skills are amazing. So that's why we do it. That's why we're here. We want to give these kids the job skills. We want to give these kids the life skills. We want to give them the superpowers. So is there going to be friction in running virtual code clubs? Probably. Is it going to be not as fun as in person? Probably. But is it going to give them the job skills and the life skills that's going to set them up to succeed and make a serious impact on their lives? Absolutely. And then just think about it too from like the library's perspective. You guys are all a part of public and school libraries around the country, and just imagine a world where libraries lead the coding education movement. I mean, like, just imagine, like, libraries, you guys are so special because you care about equality. You care about bringing access to people groups and communities that don't have access. And if public and school libraries can lead the movement on this, then we're going to live in a much better world than what we live in right now. So I love partnering with libraries for this exact reason. Okay, so that's my soapbox. I can't speak. I can't get any group of people together without getting back to the basics and back to the foundation. But that's why we're here. That's why we're going to experience a little bit of uncomfortableness and try to run virtual code clubs in the near future. All right. So now I want to talk a couple more like just high level practical stuff. Most of you have been through my training sessions over the years, and the good news is even as we transition to virtual, meaning like a video call like this, there are some things that just don't change. There are some things about the Prenda model that you've been practicing and you've been doing in person. Your code clubs are going to remain the same no matter what. And primarily it's your role as the adult. You continue to be an amazing cheerleader, mentor, and facilitator. Doesn't matter that you're doing it through the computer screen. If you can keep doing this, if you can keep channeling that amazing, like enthusiastic, high five, fist bump, like woohoo, cheerleader persona, that mentor, like don't give up, I believe in you, stick in there, you got this, or that facilitator, like, hey, did you read the directions? Hey, maybe you should try Googling it. Hey, did you ask a friend? Like if you can channel those skills like you always have, then your code club is going to be successful even virtually. So that doesn't change. And maybe that's comforting. Hopefully that's like a comfort to you. Like, okay, all I have to do is the same thing I used to have to do: cheerlead, mentor, and facilitate. The other thing that doesn't change, when kids get stuck, when they're like learning how to code and they get stuck, you still don't have to tell them the answers. In fact, I don't want you to tell them the answers. Code Club is a place where kids have to learn how to solve problems for themselves. That means that they're going to wrestle with them and they're going to struggle with them. And it's not your job to give them like the easy way out. It's your job to lead them through the struggle, to encourage them through the struggle, but to not just tell them the answer. So this is like our patented, it's not really patented, but this is our process that we teach all the time, 3-step process. Every time somebody gets stuck, first time they get stuck on a problem, they raise their hand and you say, okay, what have you tried so far? We start here because oftentimes kids don't try anything before they raise their hand or come to you for help. Even virtually, we want them to wrestle with it on their own. We want to say something like, okay, go ahead and work on it. Looks like you haven't really tried anything. I bet if you try it, you'll figure it out. And then you leave them to work on it for a couple minutes. If that doesn't solve the problem and they're still stuck, you can move on to step number 2. Step number 2 is, who else have you asked? And I'm going to talk about some practical ways that we can pair off in a virtual setting, but there are ways that we can do this so that kids can solve problems together, even virtually. I had this happen in a virtual code club I was running last week, and it was really cool to see, like, it still works on a virtual setting. You can have kids solve each other's problems even virtually, and they like it. So that's step number 2. If that doesn't solve the problem, then you can move on to step number 3, which is, okay, let's figure this out together. You tried it on your own, you worked with somebody else, you're still stuck. Let's figure this together. And that doesn't mean you tell them the answer, but that means you help them reread the directions, you help them Google it, you help them tinker with it and get it wrong and not get frustrated, and you help lead them to a solution. All right, so those are just things that just don't change about the Prenda model. This is how we've been running code clubs for years now, and it works. I have a high level of confidence. This works. If you do these things, your code club will work, kids will learn how to code, they'll have a good time, etc. As I was thinking about like the transition to virtual versus in person, these are just some of the things that came to mind about like, here's how I think we ought to think about this stuff. Here's how I think we ought to like perceive going into a virtual code club, just some like high level mindsets. And after this, we're gonna get into some practical stuff and TJ's gonna lead it for a while. But before that, just like, let's get our mindsets in the right place. Let's get some principles, some foundations set in place, and then we can tackle some practical stuff from there. So number 1, come with the attitude of a learner, okay? We're running virtual code clubs. A learner would kick off your first virtual code club and you've got 5 or 6 kids in the virtual room and you just say something like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, but we're gonna figure it out together today and we're gonna have fun with it. You know, that's the attitude of a learner that I think should be exemplified in these virtual code clubs. And doesn't that just sound like a Prenda thing, right? Like growth mindset, we're gonna figure it out, we're gonna stick with it. We don't have all the answers, but let's just extend that principle into our virtual code clubs. Number 2, embrace the chaos. There's gonna be friction. It's gonna be hard. And this is actually, I'm like rehearsing the same spiel that I tell kids when they start the journey of learning how to code. It's gonna be hard, but stick with it. You can do it. It's gonna be chaotic. I believe in you. You got this, okay? So just kind of embrace that from the get-go and don't expect it to be perfect from the very first code club, but it will get better over time, okay? Number 3, safety is still a high priority. In virtual settings, in some ways, there's added elements of danger, added elements of security and privacy for kids that we want to honor and protect as librarians and teachers. This is something that's important to us. We want to create a safe environment. And so think about the people that you have volunteering for this. You know, we want to run them through the same checks that we would otherwise. Think about the kind of communication that happens between coders in this kind of environment and what's monitored and what's not monitored. You know, I was in a virtual code club last week, like I mentioned, and this just sweet, cute little girl. She's probably 8 years old. She like figured out that she could chat people individually in Zoom. And she wasn't like being malicious or anything, but it just like set off a red flag for me. Like, let's not do that. How about if you're gonna chat, you have to chat everyone. Okay, let's not do any of these private chats in Zoom. I'm not. And so I just like made sure she knew we're not going to do that. Come on, come back. And if you want to chat everybody. And so things like that, just keep it on the top of your mind that this is still a place where we have to protect and nurture our coders. All right, number 4, strive for human connection despite meeting virtually. I think human connection is of the highest value, right? We love that we get to run code clubs because it's a coding environment. We're like learning to interact with computers, but in a human-oriented environment. And just because we're going virtually, we're going to lose some of that. We can never replace face-to-face. We can never replace it, but a video call does a really stinking good job at like trying to get there. And so let's really strive for the human connection element of all of this. And that's going to mean like joking around. That's going to mean like not having a script for the entire thing, allowing room for the spontaneous. Sometimes like personally, my tendency is like to try to avoid the awkward silences and fill it with something. And in this environment, maybe that means we allow for a little bit of awkward silence and just kind of go with it and see what happens, because it's in those spaces oftentimes that the human connection and spontaneity come into play. All right, and then lastly, the goal is fun. This is true of all of Prenda, all of Code Clubs. This is what we have always taught, but we want to have fun. We want to create a fun, lighthearted, encouraging, uplifting environment. We want to have laughter. We want to have an environment where kids feel like, wow, that was cool. I want to come back to that. This is not like a Ferris Bueller classroom setting, okay? This is a fun, like interactive, we're sharing stuff, we're telling jokes, and you can do all of that virtually. You might have to be creative with it. Icebreakers are a great way to do that, but it ought to be fun. The goal should still be fun. The more fun it is, the more kids are going to come back, the more that they're going to learn how to code, the more higher opportunity they're going to have to get the jobs in the future and the life skills that are going to make an impact on their lives. So that's it. Those are the mindsets. There's probably 100 others that I could add to that, but those were like the cream of the crop, the ones that as I thought about it, they really floated up to like, let's talk about these. All right, so TJ, I want to just give TJ some space now. He's going to get into real practical stuff. And like I said, TJ's been doing it for a long time. Since the beginning of COVID, he's been running virtual code clubs, so he's got some experience in it. And regardless of that, he's just a great facilitator. He's a great code club facilitator in Bristol, Virginia, and is doing amazing work out there. So TJ, how about you take it away from here?
Just a little about me and about my library, because your mileage may vary. Bristol, Virginia is actually on the border with Tennessee. So it is literally 2 cities, one side of the state or the other. So we do both sides of the state line. So actually we're doing Code Club through Tennessee, even though our library is 1 block into Virginia. So sometimes I'm going to say Tennessee, sometimes I'm going to say Virginia, but that's because we're on the state line. The 2 cities, if you put them together, have about 40,000 people, and the Bristol Library has 2 branches. It has our main branch, and it has a smaller branch on the Tennessee side. But that's about how big we are. So we're not a huge place, but we're not a tiny, tiny library. So you may have to scale depending. As part of Tennessee, we got on a grant to get this code club, and it started on March 1st. So we were all gung-ho. We started our first code club here in Bristol on March 2nd, and then we did another one on March 9th, And then we were closed down to the pandemic. So we kind of said, great, we've already started a code club. We had things going. Where do we go from here? And we said, well, let's just try it virtually. We don't know if it'll work. We don't know if it won't, but we tried it. So that first Monday in April, we were back with Code Club on Zoom. And the great things I found out is most of it isn't new. You still have your ways of advertising your programs. You still have your kids. Most of the kids that came to those 2 Code Club meetings came back to our virtual Code Club. So you can still recruit them. You still have your calendar. What I mean is, like right now, we're getting ready for summer reading. So we're tying in our Code Clubs to summer reading. We're starting one with our teen program, and we're starting one with the children's, and we're tying it in. Where once we get done with that, we'll go into just regular school season, and we'll make Code Clubs geared for that. So you still have the projects and the calendars that you still have. And I really found the Code Club tutorials and tips that Brenda provides still really work. So if you haven't looked at them in a while, it may be worth just reviewing and picking up some tips from there, because I found that although it's virtual, a lot of good things are in there. And by now, we hopefully all have experienced Zoom and that sort of thing. I will admit, April, I was still really shaky at Zoom, but I've gone better. So if you've done any other virtual programming, that helps as well.
Sorry.
No problem.
I was trying to chat that help link with the tutorials and stuff, and then I screwed it all up.
So, you know, we took about 2 weeks to decide how we were going to set it up, and just set it up and try it. We had no expectations. We didn't know if anyone was going to come or not. So we did it pretty quickly. So I know it can be done quickly. First thing is choose your platform. I went with Zoom. At the time, it seemed to be great. I asked around. That's what some of the schools around here were using with their kids. It doesn't have to be Zoom. It's just the one I chose. So that's the one I'm familiar with. And then once you get it, practice on it. Practice with another person. Check out the security settings. Check out the chat. You know, run a little simulated one with some other librarians. Just get used to it so you figure out what are the pitfalls. And then once you get ready, start advertising like you usually would, but get creative when you need to. So for example, I know we all rely on bookmarks and flyers and things like that to talk about upcoming programs. We just started doing curbside checkout. So, you know, we slip in material into their curbside checkout. So if we know someone's ordering a bunch of kids' books, maybe we drop in a Code Club advertisement in there. Also, we rearranged our website just a little more. So all our virtual things came onto the front page, all our databases that we thought would be useful during this time, instead of talking about, you know, how to check out books and that sort of thing. So we rearranged our website. So you may need to get a little creative. And then once you have your program, commit to a length of time. So right now we're doing it a couple months at a time, because we hope that eventually we don't have to do virtual. Hopefully we'll get back to doing in person. But do commit to a length of time. Right now we're committing to summer reading that we're going to be doing this virtual programming. And then we'll look at doing another Code Club. So that way you can think of it in chunks of time, instead of we're doing it this way forever, or we'll do it this week and see what we're doing next week. So just commit. If no one comes one week, keep it going. We started a brand new teen Code Club last week, and we had 0 participants, but we're going to be back this week and the next week, and hopefully the word will get out and we'll pick back up. So if at first no one comes, hopefully the word will get out. And the other thing, you might have to remind people more often. I have kind of found a quick reminder the day of using Prenda's messaging system really helps. I tried doing it a couple days before and people have already forgotten. So if you tell them that morning, hey, don't forget, we have a code club coming up 3 o'clock this afternoon, it tends to work. So I would say remind people often. When you start thinking about how you're going to get set up, and here's a lot of places where I made mistakes the first few clubs. So hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. Start when you say you're going to start. That first code club, I tried to start 15 minutes early, and it just was a slog for about 20 minutes because I kept on saying, well, maybe more people are going to come. So we were just sitting there looking at people's faces. So I would start maybe just a couple minutes before the program is scheduled. Don't try to start early. Having an open icebreaker, it still works. Plus, people are probably going to come in late, so having a little thing to get everyone started and start talking works nicely. I like to greet everyone when they come in. If someone's new, have them introduce themselves, or if you know a couple kids haven't met, do a quick thing. Hey, Jackson, I know you've been working on doing some of this JavaScript. Well, guess what? Max is doing it as well. You two might want to get together. So, you can facilitate a little bit this way, introducing each other. During the thing, let them code, and you concentrate on facilitating, cheerleading, and mentoring, but just let them go at it. Generally, we talk a bunch at the beginning, and then everyone kind of mutes themselves and do their own thing, and then I come back and bring people in. And then at the end, make sure you draw things to a close, make any announcements. I have not yet done a Coder of the Week because we just haven't had quite enough kids for me to say, hey, guess what? This one person, you're the Coder of the Week. But it would make a good thing to do at the end of the thing. I want to start doing it when we grow a little more. But just make sure you know what your structure is going to be going into it. Not a script, but what your structure is going to be.
Yeah. Can you explain a little more about what you mean by Coder of the Week? Because that might be a newer idea for some older Prenda people.
Right. So I think this is one of the tips I picked up. It may have been in some of the tips of Prenda, or maybe it was just at a meeting. Draw attention to something great that a kid has done. Maybe they've really gone at it, and in the last week they have done 10 workouts, and they've just really been working hard. Make them an example. Or maybe someone has put a long time into one project, and they've really been working hard on it. Or maybe just someone, like we had a kid recently that she wanted to, she thought that people may not be able to see animals lately, so she did a Scratch program where she had like little different animals, and you could click on them and hear what they sounded like, and she was just doing that because she thought people might be missing it. And so it wasn't anything with her coding skills, but her heart was there. That would have made a great Coder of the Week too. Just someone, or someone who's really consistently there, just something to praise and let someone say, hey, this person is doing a great job.
Yeah, it's like bragging rights.
Bragging rights, yeah.
Bragging rights, yeah, that's cool. Real quick, TJ, we got a question that came in for you. How long do you do your virtual meetings?
I have it set up for about 90 minutes. But usually, we've been going for about 75. Usually, we start at 3:30, and when we really start coding, maybe it's about 3:45. And so I let people kind of code for about an hour, and then about 4:30, 4:45, I start seeing where everyone is and doing and seeing when people kind of want to wrap up. And then usually about 4:45, I start wrapping it up. So it's still 90 minutes, maybe a little long, depending on the age of the kids and their attention span. But also things take a little bit longer virtually.
Yeah.
So that's about how long we've been doing. Oh, but you've been doing 2 hours. Yeah. So 90 minutes is probably a good time.
Yeah, I run mine for an hour, and it definitely feels like it's on the shorter side. By the time you get kind of through your setup stuff and greeting everybody, there's a little bit of coding, and then it's time to wrap up. But honestly, I think the goal for timing, like length, is it's always better to leave the kids wanting more at the end, feeling like, oh, I want more, than, ooh, that was really long.
Yeah.
You know, so that's how you should feel about it. Like, find that number. And then just a couple other questions that popped up. Brad agrees that 90 minutes seems to be the best for his library. And Jeannie asked, how do you sign someone off when they finishes a level? So Jeannie, we actually kind of released a new feature recently. So the sign-off code is no more. You no longer have to sign people off. The kids can just click the done button and move on. So that's a big feature for learning to code at home that is going to help a lot. All right, TJ, keep it rolling.
All right. So one big tip is organizing your screen to start with. I have come to realize that in these virtual programs, your computer screen is actually like your entire room that you'd be setting up your projects. So if you had a craft project, you made sure that you had your scissors and your supplies and everything laid out so you wouldn't have to be running back and forth. Well, virtually, your computer screen is the whole project. So take some time. If you normally spend half an hour setting up all the computers for your code club and everything like that, take about that amount of time to set up your own screen. Because if you're organized and you know where all your screens are and everything like that, it makes life a lot more pleasant for you. If you're having fun, hopefully the kids are having fun too. 2 monitors are really, really nice for Code Club. I like having one that I can kind of control Zoom and that sort of thing. And then another one that maybe I can show the different slides or share my screen. One screen just seems really limiting myself, and I tried it once with one screen, and I found I was focusing on Zoom, and I was getting really bored. So I recommend, if you can help it, get another monitor, have 2 screens. Remember about your own privacy and security. Don't forget, if you're sharing a screen, they can see what you have on your computer. So, turn on any security that you want to do. You probably don't want to show off private emails, that sort of thing. Just remember, your security matters too. And along with that, look into other things to help make it more pleasant. Windows has something called Focus Assist, so it won't pop up all those messages all the time. Turn that on. Arrange your browser windows before starting. Figure out where you want those to do. And if you're like me, I am really bad at having a bunch of different tabs and a bunch of different windows open. Before I start, I make sure I close anything that I won't need for Code Club. I turn my cell phone to silent, that sort of thing. Just arrange everything. Generally, I have a window open with Code Club, my admin screen. I have a window open with the screen that I share. I have another window open with just a generic account that I made for Prenda, and then the Zoom. And that's about all I have open, but I do have all those things going at once.
Yeah. And Mac has that same Focus Assist. I think it's called DND, do not disturb, or something like that. And then a question came in about the 2 screens. Have you seen kids using 2 screens at all, or?
Not that I know of, and that was one of those pitfalls I fell into. I was new with Zoom, and I've only used it on a PC. I was like, oh, great, we can share each other's screens and everything. And well, you can't share a screen if you have an iPad.
Yeah.
And there's certain limitations with Chromebooks, and if you're using a phone, you can't. And I had kids using all sorts of things. I think some got frustrated because they were trying to do it on a cell phone, and I haven't tried Code Club on a cell phone, but I can imagine Code Club and Zoom on a cell phone at one time probably wouldn't work very well. But no, as far as I know, most kids are using either a Chromebook or a laptop or an iPad to do.
Yeah, Zoom and Code Club on your phone. Your phone might catch on fire and all that stuff. No, I've had kids that will they'll set up their iPad for the video, and then they'll be coding on a Chromebook or something. And that actually works because if they want to show me something, they can just grab their iPad and point it at the screen. It's not elegant, but it works.
Yep, I've had a couple do that too. Yep.
Yeah, I think I remember you saying that after your first one. All right.
I found a great tip is to have some sort of graphic, even if you just type something in Word, to have the important information. That first couple code clubs I was doing, I don't know how many times I tapped into the chat box, app.printa.co, app.printa.co, and kept sharing my screen to do this and sharing it to do that. So I kind of made up a little graphic that shows app.printa.co. Just go to that website that's up top, and new users, this is what you're going to see. You're going to see a sign up. So you're going to sign up there, and then you want to go to Virginia and then Bristol Public Library. So I made that, and any announcements I put there just so as kids kind of keep coming in those first 15 minutes, I don't have to repeat myself, and the kids that have already joined in, they don't have to hear it over and over again. Yeah. So that's helped me a lot. And also joining your own code club. I know there's a way as an admin you can do it. I just set up another account and I code with that account. And that way you can show off the people in your code club. So just on my generic or on my admin account, it was just me in there. And so I couldn't really show off all the neat coders, and people like seeing the costumes and the gear they've gotten. And so it's a good way of showing it off. So make sure you join your own code club one way or the other so you can show off other members of the code club. So it's something that they get a kick out of, and it does start the conversation. Oh, where do you get that shirt? Oh, cool, you got a bow and arrow. Where do you get that? You know, and so it's just one of those tricks to get people interacting with each other.
That's a great idea. So you'll just share your screen at some point in the virtual code club with this pulled up and say, hey, check out, this person's got a shield.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And they like seeing it.
Yeah, very cool.
When it comes to in the club, just do the same things: cheerlead, mentor, facilitate. We usually start off loud, get quiet. Everyone mutes their mic, turns off their video oftentimes. So after a little bit, I'll go, hey, what's everyone working on? Hey, Sarah, what have you been working on? What are you doing today? So even when it's quiet, I try to bring the conversation back up. And again, I show off the coders in the code club, either their screen like that. One thing that I have found that I'm doing in the background while kids are getting started is if I have new code clubs or I have new kids in the code club, I go ahead and manually add them to the code club. If for no other reason, when I get that email with the stats that you had 5 people in your code club today, it will be accurate. So instead of waiting for them to type in the number of their club, I just go ahead and manually add them during the code club. I use the chat when appropriate. Of course, one thing that still happens is people forget their passwords. So I do use that to chat privately. Hey, is this your username? Okay, what do you want your password to be? And I use the chat for that. Again, I encourage the kids to help each other. Hey, I know you're both working on some Scratch. Why don't you work together on this? And usually I encourage them to share their projects, and so I can share it with everyone. Usually they give me the link, like they'll give me their project in Scratch, and I just pull up and do whatever project they've been working on, a Pong game or that. I just go, oh, cool. You know, Sarah's just made this great game about animals. Let me just go check it out and, you know, show it off that way, because again, they may not have ways to share it with each other. And that's another good way of using the chat. They'll share what games they've been making with each other in the chat. Yeah, and sometimes they don't even log in that they directly to what they've been working on. Yeah, I've been noticing that some of my kids, they just go straight to Scratch. They don't even go on to the Prenda website. I can't really control it, but you know, they're coding, they're having fun, and I figure that's what's most important. And once everything's going nicely, I like to code myself. I pick out a subject and I code, and if nothing else, that gives me a conversation to do. Like, oh, cool, I just did this, or hey, I'm stuck on this. I'll be very say, hey, I'm having some troubles. Has anyone else ever done this? Just to help the conversation get going and see if we can relate to one another. But that's basically what I do during the code club. And again, watching the security. I think Luke's going to talk a little bit about this more, but you know, muting people when it's appropriate. I've cut people's videos off and that sort of thing, you know, if it's distracting. So unlike in person, you can actually silence the kids. So that can be helpful at times.
Yeah, totally. All right. Thanks, TJ. Anything else?
That's all for right now.
All right. Let's give TJ a round of applause. That was great. Thanks, TJ. Woo-woo! So fun. And we'll have a dedicated time for questions at the end. And yeah, and you guys are welcome to ask TJ some more questions there. All right, so I'm going to just go through. Mine are like super practical, and I'm going to go through them pretty quickly here. And just as like ideas of, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that, or hopefully they'll spark something in you like that. So first practical idea, have an extra adult. If you've got 6 kids, having an extra adult makes a big difference. You have somebody that you can, if you need to do a breakout room with somebody, or if you want to send another adult to do a breakout room, or if you want to break out a couple kids, but you don't want them unsupervised, just having one extra adult makes a big difference. You can see in my virtual code club, I've got Jennifer in the top left here, and I've got Elaine over here who've been helping out. But having extra hands goes a long way. And I always, you know, kind of generally recommend that for even your in-person ones, but it makes a big difference for virtual as well, just having their support. It might even be kind of boring for the extra person. They're just kind of hanging out there until they're needed. But when they are needed, it makes a big difference. Start with an icebreaker. TJ said that. There might be some overlap between what TJ and I say, but hopefully that just means that it's stickier for you and you actually remember it. But having an icebreaker helps. Just like I kind of asked TJ that question at the beginning, I've had in my virtual code clubs, I'll have a question that everybody has to answer. And I try to do it. Some people are just on chat. Some people are on video and audio. So I'll take it in whichever way that they have, and they'll answer the question. So I've done like favorite ice cream flavor and stuff like that. So it makes a big difference to be able to start off relationally that way. Get comfortable with how to mute others. Like TJ said, this is in some ways better than the real world because you can mute people, and that's awesome. So I've had like some younger kids and they are just loud and they're not really like engaging in the right way in that moment, or they're distracting, or I'm in the middle of something. So I just kind of pop over, mute, and problem solved. I'll help them later, right? I'm not just being malicious or anything, but it is helpful to be able to mute others. So get comfortable with that function in Zoom. It's really easy. You can pull up all of the attendees for that meeting, and there's a mute button real prevalent right next to each of them. So I actually muted some of you as you were hopping into this meeting, and it's that easy. Next, utilize breakout rooms, especially if you're in Zoom. I don't know if Google or any of the other platforms have this as an option, but breakout rooms essentially create another video call within your video call. So if I wanted to send TJ and Donna Joe into their own breakout room to work on a problem together, I could do that right now. And then I could click another button and they would come back when I'm ready to have them come back. And as the host of the meeting, I can go back and forth between the breakout rooms or the main room as I want. So I've used breakout rooms when solving problems. So if a kid's like, how do I do level 5 of Hour of Code? I'll ask the room, hey, who knows how to do this thing? And if somebody knows how, I'll say, all right, you guys go solve this together. And then I'll send an adult with them also, so that there's like a small group that are collaborating on that particular project. The other time that I think it might be helpful to use a breakout room is at the very beginning for new kids. So you make your announcements. Hey, who's new today? Okay, we're all gonna go create accounts together. And then everybody else, you start coding. So you take all of them into a breakout room, lead them through the account creation process. Meanwhile, everybody else is coding. And when you're done creating accounts, you all rejoin in the main room. Also, if the group is too large, you're gonna have to be your own judge of what is too large. If it's 6 kids, 7 kids, 10 kids, I don't know. I had, I think 12 or 15 last week, but I had 2 other adults. So it didn't feel too large in that situation. And I also had, I had 2 Zoom windows that had like 4 or 5 kids on each window. And that's okay too. They were like using the Zoom for just like to be connected, but then they were all on their own devices coding. So not every user has to have their own individual window. So yeah, if the group is too large, if you get like 20 people and you've got 2 adults, you might want to say, hey, how about we just split it 10 and 10 today, and you lead that one, and I'll lead this one. You could split it just arbitrarily, or you could try to get the older kids in one room and the younger kids in another room. So just some ideas there. Spontaneous show and tell. TJ kind of alluded to this, but as kids are working on stuff, I really encourage them like, hey, do you want to show it? And have them show it. There's a couple ways you can facilitate that. If the kids know how, you can do a screen share and they can show their screen that way. If they don't know how to do a screen share, and it can be kind of tedious to walk somebody through that process. Like I have trouble walking adults through that process pretty regularly. So it can be really tedious for the kids. I'll just say, hey, how about you just chat me your link and I'll pull it up and share it. So that I've done it both ways, but I do it a lot. And then once kids saw that I was doing that, other kids were like, oh, I want to show something. Oh, I want to show something. And by the end of our code club, we had 4 or 5 kids that had shown like different stuff that they were working on. And so that's just a really rewarding thing. It really like makes it feel like a code club. Lay some ground rules. I did the same thing that TJ does with that slide. I have a slide up as kind of the intro slide that have instructions for starting new accounts. And then the other half of it are the ground rules. And I just made some up here, but you can lay your own ground rules for your own code club. But I think that's helpful to just say like, this is the environment, the culture that we're building. I know a lot of people do a variation on this in person. This is just a way to extend that to a virtual environment. Know your limitations. I think it's totally appropriate in a virtual code club to just say like, I'm sorry, but I have a limited capacity. I have a limited like capacity to run these things. So if this is going to work at all, I need to place some limitations on it. That could be the length of meeting time, to say like, I only have an hour in me. Or if you're on a free Zoom account, I literally only have 40 minutes till it kicks me off. And that's totally okay. Do it for that 40 minutes until you get booted off, and don't have any shame about that. Number of people you can handle, like there's an added complexity to virtual. And if you're like, I can only do 10 people, then set that limit on it, and don't be embarrassed by that. 10 people are better than 0 people, right? Frequency of meetings, if you're like, I can do it every other week, that's fine. And then software features, meaning like, don't feel like you have to use breakout rooms. Don't feel like you have to use share screen. Those can be complex and taxing to try to get kids to interact with them. And just say like, I'm not gonna even mess with that. I'm just gonna set that as a limitation of me running a virtual code club, and I'm not even gonna mess with it, right? And that will hopefully free you up to feel like, okay, I got the video and I got Prenda, and we're good now. Like that's all I'm gonna focus on. And if you can do that, I think you'll still be able to run an effective one where you're not feeling overwhelmed. Provide good instructions ahead of time. In your communication, if you have a registration form, make sure it's real clear. Like, do you want kids to have their video? Do you want them to have a device where they can connect by video and audio? You don't have to have that. I prefer it. It definitely helps, but it's not necessary. But make sure that whatever your expectations are, that it's clearly communicated so that you set your code club up to succeed. So if you need to send out a couple extra emails ahead of time expressing that, as I ran training sessions and run training sessions over the past several years, this is something I've had to get much better at. I communicate clearly, like, hey, we're going to do a virtual training, and you really need to have a video. You really need to have audio. So if you can't have those 2 things, we can't do our training session. So the same idea, just put that up front, and it's going to help you succeed down the road. A couple helpful slides. You can have a slide where you're doing a screen share with ground rules and instructions. How to create a Prenda account could have its own slide. I'll show you mine in a second. And then like, just to add on to TJ's, what he was saying during the actual code club, like once things are kind of settled in and people are doing their own thing, I think my job, if I'm not coding, is to just check in pretty regularly. Hey, you guys doing okay? You guys doing okay? Can you give me the thumbs up? Or I'll be chatting that same idea in to people that way. So yeah, just check in regularly, make sure they're doing all right, make sure nobody's hung up or stuck on something, because that could be really frustrating. The final kind of thing I want to say, and then I've got a resource that I'm going to share with you, but the final thing I want to say is, with all these practical tips, I just want to like encourage you. You can do it. You have what it takes. You can run a virtual code club. It's not that hard. You're going to encounter friction, just embrace it, but you've got what it takes to run a virtual code club, okay? High five. That's right. All right, I do have a slide that I made. This is the slide I've been using for mine. I just wanted to share it as a resource for you guys. You can copy and paste, or you can, in Google Slides, you can go to File. In fact, I can show you right now. File, make a copy. And it will allow you to make a copy of that so that you can edit it for your own needs. So I'm sending that in the chat now. Oh, and one more thing, and then we'll open it up for questions. There's a learning opportunity. As part of the summer program that we're running, which you all have access to as Prenda customers, your community has access to the Great Prenda Code Challenge 2020. I'm running a weekly virtual code club every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific or 12 p.m. Eastern. And any of you that want to learn how to run a virtual code club, sign up and come be an extra adult. Notice this is my way to get extra adults in my virtual code club. But you can be a part of it and learn and see how it goes and get more comfortable with it before jumping in and doing it on your own. So I'll send you the link for this to sign up for that meeting. It's happening every Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 p.m. Eastern for the rest of the summer. I'd love to see you in there. You don't have to really communicate anything extra with me. Just hop in to the meeting on Thursday, and I'll see you there. And then I'll start to lean on you for some of the extra helper stuff. All right, with that, we've got about 5 minutes left. I just want to open it up for questions. What else can we help with? What other conversations, what can we add to our conversation from today that will help equip and empower you to run virtual code clubs? Feel free to speak it out if you've got audio capability. Otherwise, you can drop it in the chat. Just give it a couple moments here for that awkward silence that I talked about earlier.
I had a question about sharing the link to the Zoom meeting. What's the best way? Are you sending it through the email notification through Prenda or what?
I'm sorry, the link for the summer virtual code club?
No, like you start a virtual code club and you like TJ did. How does he share his link?
What I do is I have it set up that they have to register ahead of time. And then I take that link and I put it in everything. I put it in the emails I send out. I use a Prenda message. I use Bitly to shorten it so it's easier for text, but I put it everywhere. But I do make people register ahead of time, so hopefully that will help with the security.
Yeah, and I do the same thing. I use the Zoom registration system, so they have to register and they don't get the link to the actual call until they register. Good question, thanks. Was that Ginger that asked that? Cool, thanks Ginger, appreciate it.
And you use the free Zoom account. We purchased one. I just want to add that we didn't look into it, so we're now just discovering that it's cheaper through TechSoup. So I think it's $65 for a year on TechSoup. So if you're like us and you're thinking, oh, we might be doing virtual programming for a while, it may be worth investing.
Yeah, the limitations of the free one, I don't think there's a number, like it's not really a number of people limitation, although I'm sure there is one, but it's the time limit. It's 40 minutes for the free one, and then you're booted off.
I have a quick question. This is Janelle.
Yeah.
Do you record your Zoom meetings at all for those that can't make it that week?
It's a good question. TJ was asking that same thing of what I do yesterday. I don't. I feel like it's not like I'm giving a lesson or anything. It's not like they're going to miss content. They're actually just missing the experience of coding alongside their peers. So I'm not going to record it. There's like safety and privacy things that I have concerns about that I just don't want to mess with it. So I don't. I don't think TJ, do you?
No, same thoughts ahead of time. That was one of the first questions I got asked, and I said, no, we won't be recording this. This is not a tutorial. It's an experience. So,
yeah.
Thanks.
Good question. Other questions? Great. Well, yeah, I really appreciate your guys' time today. We are at the limit. We used all of our time, the whole hour. And yeah, I really believe that like you guys are amazing. You're doing great work. It's an honor to partner with libraries. Like we care about the same things that you care about. And I'm just so excited that there's so many people expressing interest in being uncomfortable, even more than regular. Like, as we've been doing Prenda for 4 or 5 years now, there's like, we're constantly overcoming people being uncomfortable with coding. Like, it's hard, we don't know how to code. How can we run these programs in our library? And now there's an extra layer of friction. And still, there's like 30 people on this call right now. It's amazing. So you guys are really remarkable, and I'm just honored to get to work with you. So let's go build something awesome in our communities. Let's teach kids how to code. And have a great rest of your day. I'll be sending the recording out to everybody, but thanks a lot. Appreciate you guys.